Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, and if you're not, why not? Press that button there, press that subscribe button, please. Like, thumbs up and all that. You can even leave a comment. Do loads of cult stuff, film reviews, book reviews, out and about trips, all that sort of stuff that you see everywhere else, but I do it too. So please subscribe and tag along for the ride. If you do watch this channel regularly, and if you don't, no, I've done all that. If you do watch this channel regularly, you will be familiar with my physical media updates, where I run through the latest Blu-rays, 4Ks, occasional DVDs, CDs and so on that I pick up on my travels out and about. Last one was about a fortnight ago. This one is slightly different, as you'll see from the thumbnail. This isn't a physical media update, it's a stuff update. Because there's not much in the way of physical media. I haven't actually picked up many new discs and things over the last few weeks. But I do have some stuff, some cult stuff, which might be of interest to fans of geekiness. So I just thought I'd do a quick video just bringing you up to date on some of the things I've bought. I will do the physical media stuff first of all. Then the only one disc I have picked up is this Waterworld on 4K. This is in fact a French edition, as you'll see by all the French talk on the back. I picked this up. It was quite cheap on Amazon France, 7-8 quid, something like that. And I do quite like Waterworld. It's often described as Kevin Costner's great folly. Did no one see The Postman? Actually, no, nobody did see The Postman. This is actually a very good film, very underrated film, made in very difficult circumstances. But I think it actually turned out into a pretty good adventure film. Quite spectacular, some good action stuff in it. And of course, it's always difficult making films out on the wild waters. But I think they made a good job of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing this again. I haven't seen it for years. I remember actually when it came out, going to see it in the cinema, and thinking, well, it's actually really good. Because it was sort of written off before it arrived. And I think it sort of turned a profit eventually, because it's a good film. So worth a rewatch. That's the only disc. So physical media fans might want to say bye-bye now, but you can hang around, will be even better. Some books. I've got a few new books, and I will run through them. Yes, there's quite a few of them, actually. Right, book-wise, bookies. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. There's a new raft of Doctor Who Target books out from BBC. It's quite nice they're carrying on that tradition of the Doctor Who books that started in the 1970s, novelisations of Doctor Who TV stories. Of course, they were fascinating at the time because fans didn't know a lot about the history of Doctor Who. The episodes weren't readily available. You couldn't just put on a disc or stream an old episode. You had to wait for the rare occasions the BBC would show a repeat, or just resign yourself to the fact these things were stuck in the archives. You'd never see them again. So the book series that started in 73 was a real boon for Doctor Who fans and gave many of us our sort of background knowledge into the history of Doctor Who. And of course, the run eventually, the run ran out, if you like, when the ran out of stories. And it didn't seem that there would be much opportunity or even point in novelizations of the TV episodes that are so readily available. However, we get them. We've had several batches now of really nicely put together books in the style of the original Target books, with the Target logo, art covers which resemble the original Target books, which are going back to that era, and they're doing really good novelizations of those Doctor Who stories. And of course, because the episodes are 45 minutes long, the writers, who are generally the original writers of the stories themselves, can put in lots of material that was taken out, lots of things they didn't have time to put in, lots of bits and pieces that fill in the gaps in the story. So they really are not just records of the episodes, but records of stories. So the two I've picked up so far, and I haven't picked them all up yet because I just haven't got time to read them at the moment. Waters of Mars by Phil Ford. This is one of the David Tennant era specials in his final year as the Doctor, 2009. I have actually started reading this. It's very good. So I should, now things are a bit quieter, I should rattle through these fairly quickly. I've also picked up Kablam by Pete McTeague. This is one of the best episodes from Jodie Whittaker's first season as the Doctor, season 11. This is the sort of Amazon warehouse parody, if you like. Really good episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Pete McTeague has embellished the 45-minute story. The others are available, I believe, off the top of my head. There's a new version of Warrior's Gate by Stephen Gallagher, and Zygon Invasion by Peter Harness. I think there's another one, but at the moment I can't remember it, sorry. But so I'm looking forward to picking up the rest of those. I did enjoy reading the batch that came out last summer. I read them all quite quickly. But I've just had a busy couple of weeks, as I mentioned in the last video. So now things are finally quiet and I've got all my writing commitments out the way and there's nothing else going on in the pipeline at the moment. I should be able to rattle through these in the next week or so and let you know what I thought of them. A couple more book type things. This was a gift from a friend of mine, Sean A. Hello, Sean, who sent me this a couple of weeks back. This is the TARDIS Eruditorum, Volume 1, William Hartnell, by Phil Sandifer. These books came out some years ago, and it's sort of a critical, 2011 in fact, and it's a sort of critical essays about Doctor Who from the beginning, looking at the episodes from a slightly different perspective. A sideways look, as they sometimes say. I think there are new editions of this which have come out, which is why Sean has sent me this. I have dipped into it briefly. Again, I haven't had time to sit and read very much at the moment, so this is on my list as one to flick through. I understand that Phil Sandifer's stuff can be quite controversial and forthright. So yeah, I'm looking forward to digging into that. Comic strips next. Yeah, this is a bit weird. I picked this up from eBay for £1. Doctor Who comic strips. They've been going almost as long as Doctor Who has, and I can take them or leave them. I like the classics from the 70s, the ones that were published in Countdown and TV Action. The ones that appear in Doctor Who magazine these days don't appeal quite so much. But I did pick up this. This is Doctor Who Archives Volume 2, featuring Matt Smith and Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill as Amy and Rory. These are the strips that appeared in Titan Comics back at the time of this particular TARDIS team. I haven't read any of them before, but I thought this was £1 on eBay. £1, can you believe, with a couple of quid for postage. The RRP is $14.99. And I've actually started reading them. I didn't think I would. The reason I read them is because I do like the artwork. Modern comics, I've said this before when I picked up comics, I don't like the style of modern artwork. I find it's not, because I'm used to the sort of the smooth lines of the Jack Kirby's and Steve Ditko's and John Buscema's and so on in the 70s, 60s and 70s. I find this brittle sort of post-graphic novel, this is gritty and adult artwork of today's comics completely unappealing, doesn't interest me. But these are actually really nice. They're good stories. The artwork is there's different. It's a collection of different issues of the comic, and you can see the artwork is really very good. It's very good likenesses of the core cast. I mean, the early story is set in, the first story is set in Casablanca and involves an insurgence by Silurians. And even though the art is a bit more stylistic, it still makes it, quite, I'm saying easy to read as if, I have trouble reading. But I think the story flows if the art is comprehensible, frankly. So this is a really nice selection of stories, and I am quite a way through reading it at the moment and really enjoying it, because I like the artwork, and the stories I think are much better and in the style of the TV series much more than the ones we get in British comics, which is a shame. And as I said, this was £1. It's a big chunky book. I actually bought it, I'll be honest, I bought it to sell it on eBay. I thought I could probably get 7 or 8 quid for this, but I'll probably keep it because it's actually really very good. And I am in the process of tracking down some of these other archive ones that they did for Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, maybe not so much the later ones, but I'm enjoying these stories. I like the art, and the stories are very good as well. Some more comic-y type things. These I picked up from a car boot a few weeks ago. No, I haven't shown them yet. I think it's about a couple of quid for all of these. Old DC comics. So Superman, the Man of Steel, #1. Don't worry, it doesn't go back to the 1930s. This is one of the numerous reboot series that comic strips come up with. This dates back to 1992. So it's over 30 years old. Again, it's quite. I don't think I've read this yet. No, as I said, I haven't been doing much reading. But again, the artwork is fairly traditional, fairly standard. So I probably will take a look at that at some point. I also picked up this one, and I have read this. I think I read it anyway. Yeah, this is Superman 1999 Annual Report, which is written by Steve Vance, and this is from 1999. It's a sort of a new origin of Superman, another new origin of Superman when he comes to Earth and gets found and becomes Clark Kent and so on. looking at it now, I know I started reading it. I don't know if I finished it, but it's yeah, it's quite a nice little comic book. I also picked this up. I won't show you all of them. It's a mini series based on Ender's Game. There was a terrible film of that starring Harrison Ford and Asa Butterfield. I think came out a few years ago. Terrible, boring film. But I think the universe of Ender's Game, if you like, continues and continues. This is a 5-part Marvel mini series. Ender's Game: Speaker for the Dead. And that's 5 comics in there. This was a couple of quid, I think. So I picked these all up at a boot sale a few weeks back. Before the big one, there's a big one here. This came today. I ordered this from eBay. This is one of the Doctor Who Chronicles magazines that Doctor Who magazine brings out every few months. Just looking at a year in the history of Doctor Who, for the making of the episodes, merchandising, everything that was going on at the time socially around Doctor Who. An interesting archive about the show. There have been numerous previous editions. I didn't pick this one up for several reasons. It's sort of that late period Doctor Who, which I'm not desperately interested in. But I realised a few weeks ago that was a bit foolish. I would track it down because, you know, if you're collecting something, you're collecting something. If it's going to build into a complete chronicle of Doctor Who, silly to miss one. It's not available in shops anymore, but I managed to track one down from eBay and it arrived today, so I'm quite pleased to have that. And I probably will flick through it because there's always interesting stuff to be learned about Doctor Who, whether you like that particular era or not. These are 2 books that I picked up in a charity shop in Cardiff last week, 50p each. 2 Doctor Who annuals. Doctor Who Annual 2018, which was the last one featuring Mr. Peter Capaldi, and the 2019 annual, which is the first featuring Jodie Whittaker. I don't pick up these as a matter of course because they're very much kids' books, puzzles and very basic Doctor Who stuff, but for 50p each I sort of couldn't leave them there. I've got a lot of the other ones. I've got a lot of the early Doctor Who annuals from World Distributor, and these are very slim volumes that won't take up much room on the shelf, so I thought I'd pick up those as well. And there's a couple of quite amusing comic strips in there, and they're worth the browse if nothing else. And now, a drum roll please. Bit feeble. This is the cream of the crop in terms of the new stuff I've picked up. Bit of background. A friend of mine, a fellow Starburst magazine writer, damn his hide, he went into a local charity shop and found a massive collection of 1960s classic British comics. And not being a fool, he picked them all up. They were TV Century 21 comic. Now, those of you of an older disposition will remember this classic Jerry Anderson-based comic, which launched in '65 with these gorgeous colour strips, things like Fireball XL5, and in fact, this Stingray. And this became a huge phenomenon, of course, when Thunderbirds appeared a few months later. My friend actually had a run of these, so he was getting rid of his duplicate copies, and he kindly let me have 20 of them. I got hold of 20 of the original series, if you like, because TV Century 21 was split into 2 series. There was one, the very glossy Anderson-inspired one, and then it sort of relaunched then as a slightly, well, rather less glossy comic that had a lot of other adventurous things which weren't Jerry Anderson-based, and things like Land of the Giants and Star Trek, but the production quality wasn't quite this. It didn't have the sort of cachet that the original had. So I received, for my sins, 20 editions of this particular comic, starting with, there's a nice run of them actually, number 34, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, and I'll find the number on that one. And then another run from later on in 2066 from 54 onwards. I just love this comic. I have such fond memories. I mean, I had all this. Every week I picked up this comic, and of course it had the famous Dalek strip on the back, which has been reprinted several times. But it's just nice to see, you know, this is when it first appeared. This is its first printing. It's so nice to have them. But if you're a fan of these shows, I mean, just flicking quickly through them. I love the way they had these sort of newspaper type things with headlines and text stories sort of as in the style of a newspaper, and these beautiful colour pictures from Fireball XL5. Of course, these early ones came out before Thunderbirds appeared, and Thunderbirds was the big Jerry Anderson show, and that arrived in 1965, and of course this is where we get a reference to Fab One, Lady Penelope's car. but I still think that the comic strip hadn't arrived as yet. In here, just looking through, because when Thunderbirds exploded, of course, that became the big one. No, this was before Thunderbirds actually appeared as a comic strip. Although I noticed that they do have the Lady Penelope strip, with the Lady Penelope from Thunderbirds. So just really nice, extraordinary piece of nostalgia. By the time we get to issue 53, and it's interesting to see the backup characters. There's one of the early Thunderbird stories. In fact, I remember this very well. It's just sort of quite a contemporary story. It's about forest fires and people being trapped in forest fires. Yeah, great. And it also, they had these backup strips, which didn't seem to necessarily fit in. Things like Get Smart, the old American comedy series. So yeah, these are really fascinating historical documents, and the art is just superb art. Yeah, so I was very pleased to get 20 issues of those. I have been looking out for them on eBay over the last couple of years. They are fairly pricey, and I just haven't bitten the bullet. I picked up lots of copies of Countdown, which is the comic from the 70s, which was sort of a 1970s version of TV Century 21, and I've picked up a lot of those. But it's nice to have a big wadge of Century 21s. Not the sort of thing that comes your way all that often, so I was really pleased to get them. The final thing I'm going to show you is things I haven't actually looked at in any great depth myself. I picked these up again from eBay for a few quid last week. One of my other favourite programmes from the 60s is Land of the Giants. You probably remember the series about these passengers on this suborbital liner who find themselves on a Land of the Giants. Part of the merchandising was a series of, I think, what would have been sweet cigarette cards at the time. And I sort of remember having some of these, but of course they've long gone. And I picked up a couple of batches of them quite cheap on YouTube, and they look like this. This sort of photographs from the series. On the back, there was a separate story that you could read once you'd got all the cards. They're just nice little colour images from what was at the time the most expensive TV series ever made. It was created by Irwin Allen, who of course did Lost in Space, Time Tunnel, Voice at the Bottom of the Sea. This for me is his best. I sort of was obsessed with this series for a while. I love the idea of people, tiny people. I still love that idea of tiny people in a sort of a giant landscape, because I love that sort of thing about small people and giant people sort of thing. And this is the second batch we haven't opened yet. Looking at the pictures, if you look at them, they're nice pictures. The printing quality is not always fantastic, because printing colour cards probably was quite expensive in the day. So, but some really nice pictures. In fact, there's doubles of that one. Perilous Journey. That's a sort of a classic Land of the Giants image, if you remember the series from the first episode. The main character is trapped by this giant scientist in a box when he's conducting experiments on them. It's just a series I have such, not just fond memories of, because I've seen them all and since, and I've got them on DVD. And it's, although I think if you look at it now, the stories, there's nothing in the way of story arcs and character development. It's very much episode of the week, which is what TV used to be like, but it was not necessarily any worse for that. And the last batch is, that one? That's another quite familiar image. I think that was on one of the short-run comic books. That one, I think we've had that one before. Yeah, it's just a nice little odd keepsake of real archive stuff going back to the 60s. So there we are, a mixed bag of stuff, I think you'd agree, a sort of like an odd collection, I suppose, slightly eclectic collection of things. Apologies for those of you who like to see the DVDs and Blu-rays. I just haven't picked up much the last few weeks, but I think there's a nice variety of strange things here, which hopefully will have been of interest to you. Right, thank you for watching this video. Coming up next, there'll be a few things coming up in the next few days. Now I've got a bit more time. Next thing I'm doing is I will call it a retro movie review. It's the Meg, the original Meg, with Jason Statham, came out a few years ago. I'm watching that again purely because the Meg 2 is out in 2 days' time, and I'm hoping to see it, if not Friday, then over the weekend. But I do want to revisit the first one, just so I sort of know a bit, remember the backstory of the character and so on. So I'll be watching that probably later tonight, get a video up the next day or so. So there'll be a few things coming over the next few days. Right, thank you for watching. Don't forget, as I've said, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment and a thumbs up. I'll see you next time. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.